Hey everyone, so today we have the Ross-Barger Philosophy Inventory quiz that we're going to be taking. So the directions are to respond to each question in the space provided. We have these printouts here. Either agree or disagree to 40 separate statements. The key to scoring is going to be found at the end of the answer page. And what it's going to do is it's going to break up our philosophical answers into 4 different ideas or idea paradigms. So the first one is idealism. Idealism identifies and describes the metaphysical perspectives which assert that reality is indistinguishable and inseparable from human perception and understanding. So it's kind of like the reality is a mental construct that's closely connected to your ideas. Idealist perspectives are often in 2 categories. Subjective idealism, which proposes that material objects exist only to the extent that the human being can perceive it. And there's also objective idealism, which is purposes the existence of an objective consciousness that exists prior to and independently of human consciousness. Thus, the existence of the object is independent of human perspective.
That one sounds a little bit like I might get some of that going on.
Yeah, I definitely feel like the metaphysical part and the reality being indistinguishable from human perception and understanding is definitely going to ring true for both of us.
Yeah. All right. That's all for idealism?
Yeah. So the next one, I feel like this might be one of the ones that we
No bueno.
yeah, no bueno. It's realism. So this view, yeah, right. Realism is a view about the properties of reality in general, holding that reality exists independently of the mind as opposed to non-realist views, like some forms of skepticism and solipsism, okay, which question the certainty of anything beyond one's own mind. Philosophers who profess realism often claim that truth consists in a correspondence between cognitive representations and reality. So
yeah, I see a little bit of that. Okay. So I have a feeling that I'm going to get something way different than I suspect.
yeah, this might be really interesting, actually. So then the next category is pragmatism. So pragmatism is a philosophical tradition that considers words and thoughts as tools and instruments for prediction, problem solving, and action, and rejects the idea that the function of thought is to describe, represent, or mirror reality. Pragmatists contend that philosophical topics such as the nature of knowledge, language, concepts, meaning, belief, and science are all best viewed in terms of their practical uses and successes. I think that's the main key point of pragmatism.
Yeah, I completely agree with that too. So I kind of, yeah, I agree with like all of this already. So I'm kind of confused what I'm going to get here.
So the last one is existentialism, which is something I love too. It's a form of philosophical inquiry that explores the problem of human existence and centers on the experience of thinking, feeling, and acting. In the view of an existentialist, the individual's starting point has been called the existential angst, a sense of dread, disorientation, or confusion, or anxiety in the face of apparently meaningless or an absurd world. Existentialist thinkers frequently explore issues relating to the meaning, purpose, and value of human existence. So to me, it's like a meta-analysis of human existence or something like that.
Okay. Yeah, I already feel like I identify at least a little bit with all those. So
Yeah, so I'm curious where the percentages are gonna lie.
all right. So are you ready? Do you want to begin?
Yeah, we can begin.
All right. You want me to read the first question?
Yeah.
Okay. Number 1. Learning is a process of interacting with people and things around us. It leads to new understandings, which can then be used to solve social problems. Okay.
Interesting. Okay.
So, learning is a process of interacting with people and things around us. It leads to new understandings, which can then be used to solve social problems. So, now we're going to agree or disagree.
I mean, I think I agree with that statement. I mean, because learning is a process of interacting with people and things around us. Like that's exactly what learning seems to be. It's like you observe something and then you take whatever knowledge you can form around it from it, and it can be used. This is where I think the pragmatist part comes in, being used to solve social problems. So that's interesting
That is
because,
interesting. Because I agree. Like, I think I'm on the same page with you. I think learning is a process of interacting with people and things around us. That's clearly true. I mean,
but the second part is intriguing because it says it leads to new understandings which can then be used to solve social problems. So, like, is should solving social problems be inherent to?
yeah, I think I do agree with this because it says that it leads to new understandings which can then be used to solve social problems. I think that has to be true. It doesn't say which must then be used. You know what I mean? I mean, the new understanding can. I mean, I'm not trying to be too picky with the every word, but
I think I'm with you there.
I think
Yeah.
I agree with this.
All right. So yeah, A it is.
Agree.
And also, there's going to be a link in the description here for this particular quiz. So if anybody wants to follow along and answer for themselves and compare their results to what we got, I'm going to definitely post in the show notes a link to this particular test.
Yep, learn a little bit about yourself.
So, question number 2. The human person is primarily a nervous system which is influenced by interaction with the physical environment along lines recognized by science.
Okay, I think you know what I'm gonna say on this.
I think it's an easy disagree just because of the word primarily.
Yeah, I disagree. And primarily, I do not think a human person is primarily a nervous system at all. Um, I mean, we have a nervous system, but I'm gonna go disagree. What do you disagree with about that?
Yeah, I really think the word primarily is the difference maker there because, yeah, like you said, we have a nervous system and it is influenced by interaction with the physical environment. But to say that the human person is primarily a nervous system, I'm going to disagree with that.
Yeah, and it goes to basically what we were talking about before we started the podcast. We're talking about consciousness a lot and all that, and based on what we were talking about, nervous system is not primary.
Yeah, I happen to agree.
Yeah. All right. That I disagree for both of us. So far, we're the same. Okay. All right. Number 3. Education should lead a person to spiritual understanding. You want to go ahead with this?
Yeah, I think for me, this is an easy agree just because true knowledge, true education um, would should definitely involve a person's spiritual development. I mean, obviously, the current definition of education that we have within, like, Western civilized society is not that. But yeah, I'm gonna go with and agree on that one for sure.
All right. Well, I will disagree. This is where we part ways now. Okay. Education should lead a person to spiritual understanding. I don't like the word should there. I don't think education should. I think personally for me, I think it should, but I don't think as like a blanket statement. I don't agree with that.
Okay, fair enough.
I think spiritual understanding isn't for everybody necessarily. I mean, a lot of people reject it, and I don't think every kind of education should lead to any spiritual understanding. Personally, I do agree with that for myself, but as a statement, that's a good question now I'm thinking. Is this how would I answer that? Agree or disagree? Because is this part because I think my education should lead to you know what I'm saying?
Well, since the question doesn't actually say or specify
It's talking about
you
education.
personally, yeah, I think it
Yeah.
means like your overall outlook on what education should be.
So with others as well. Actually, that's kind of interesting now because like I'm with you in a sense that I do agree that that's important. But I don't, you know what I mean when I'm saying the word should? I don't think that it's a necessity or like, I don't think it should be a necessity. I think it should be like a personal choice, like you know what I mean?
Well, the way I see it is if I'm going to value, like put a value system on education and its effectiveness in the world, I think that if it doesn't include spiritual intelligence in some way, shape, or form, then it's ineffective.
Yeah. All right. I'm gonna actually agree. I'm still with you. I was kind of trying to maybe stray away, but I mean, I do feel strongly about this, but it's just the word should kind of threw me off a little bit. But I guess in a perfect world it should. All right, I'm gonna agree. We're gonna get to some disagreements at some point here.
All right, number 4. Knowledge involves successful adaptation to our surroundings.
Hmm. Knowledge involves successful adaptation to our surroundings. I think I agree with that. Knowledge involves successful adaptation to our surroundings. Yeah, I'm gonna agree with that because I can't really pick out why I would disagree. I mean, it involves, it doesn't encompass. You know what I mean?
Or it doesn't say must
Yeah.
or something like a definitive statement. It just says like,
I mean, as human beings, that's like our ability to adapt is, is what separates us from everything.
yeah, it's a big part of knowledge.
We can
So
survive everywhere. Yeah, I'm gonna agree. Number 4 is agree. What about you?
yeah, I think I'm going to agree with that too. I just think that that's a statement that the wording saying knowledge involves successful, yeah, because yeah, involves is a word that I think
It's not too
you can't really
strong.
deny it, you know?
Yeah, that's like that's essentially human beings, I say.
Yeah, and successful adaptation, like the point of knowledge is for you to be able to progress as a human. And if you can't adapt to your environment and your surroundings, then how are you supposed to like continuously progress? So yeah, I definitely think that's going to be an agree.
Okay. All right, we're both in agreement. All right, number 5. Knowledge is accurate if it reflects physical material reality. What do you think?
I am going to give this one a disagree, I think, because its accuracy doesn't depend solely on physical and material reality.
Knowledge is accurate if it reflects physical material reality.
There are many types of knowledge, and I don't think that all of them would adhere to that statement.
I'd also disagree with this. Um, yeah, I think there's more to knowledge than just physical material reality. So number 5 will be a disagree. So far we're still in agreement on everything.
Yeah, it looks like it.
Okay. I'm not surprised. Number 6. The human person is basically a spiritual being. What do you have to say about that, Josh?
I'm going to agree there because I think at our core, we are spiritual beings. Like the phrase, like, I'm trying to get this right. We are spiritual beings having a human experience
Yep.
as opposed to we are human beings having a spiritual experience. Yeah, I tend to align with the first one.
Totally agree with you. So we are both in agreement on that too. Yeah, we are spiritual beings. A lot of people don't know that. Um, it's interesting. I would like to see how a lot of how people answer these, because I mean, it's to us, it's so like natural because we're very similar minded. We're gonna end up with probably something pretty close as a final answer here.
Yeah, I'm really waiting for some of these questions to start to divide us. It's going to
Yeah.
be nice if it does.
Okay, so we were both in agreement on 6. Yep, on 6. Okay.
Okay, so 7 is the human person discovers knowledge from the physical material world.
It doesn't say only, you know what I mean? I think the human person discovers knowledge from the physical material world. My initial inclination is to agree with that because, like I said, it doesn't say only. I mean, there's definitely knowledge to be learned from physical material world. Um, hmm. I mean, yeah, you have to agree with that, right? I mean,
I think you do
yeah,
because it's a true statement.
it
It
is.
it
Yeah,
doesn't say only.
yeah. It's not discounting anything else. I mean, physical material world is what we're experiencing right now. So
And to say that you can't acquire knowledge from that is
It's
not
kind of
right.
insane.
Yeah, it's an
Yeah.
incorrect statement. So yeah, I think you kind of have to
We're
agree
we're
there.
gonna both be realists by the end of this.
I know, right?
All right. So, all right, we both agreed that was number 7.
Hmm.
Okay. Um. Okay. Number 8. Knowledge is meant to be used. It is ultimately a means to survival.
How much more pragmatic can you get, right? I know where that
Yeah.
number is going.
Right. Yeah.
Oh man, that's such a tough one because of the second part of the question, because it's almost like it's trying to drill in
The survival aspect.
yeah, I have to disagree because it says it's ultimately a means to survival. And like that's not what all knowledge is.
And again, I am with you. I definitely disagree with this because I think there's definitely a lot of knowledge that you get from actually, pushing your survival instincts and motives to the side. I mean, I think that's another thing that's very special about us as human beings. We're able to function in a way that isn't purely based on survival instinct. So I'm going to disagree with number 8.
That's such a great point. I really agree with that.
Yeah, like I feel like a lot of the most important stuff you can learn, especially with, you know, psychedelic experiences and stuff like that, you have to kind of push your survival, your monkey mind to the wayside.
And you can apply the things that you learn to survival, but the word ultimately there is what's turning me off of this question
Mm-hmm.
because ultimately it means to survival. Nah.
Yeah, I agree. But the first part, knowledge is meant to be used, not only, but it is meant to be used, but not ultimately as a means to survival.
Yeah, it seems that this is like this question is really geared toward the
The
pragmatist.
pragmatic, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think we both agree then on that one. All right. So number 9, education is basically a process of spiritual growth. Ooh, man. What do you think on that?
Um, um, I would say I I think I agree with that. Part of me wants to disagree, but when I think about it, education is basically a process of spiritual growth. I think that's true. I mean, what do you think about that? I need to think about that for a second.
I think it's true because if I'm if I'm defining education, I'm going to define education as like effective education. So I think effective education is definitely spiritual growth because if I I wouldn't consider myself educated until I started on the spiritual path, quote unquote.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. And I do, yeah, education is basically a process of spiritual growth. Yeah, I'm going to agree. Because, I mean, spiritual growth is, it's kind of all that we're really doing as people. I mean, a lot of, especially, myself, speaking for myself, that's what I feel like I'm doing. A lot of people uh, might disagree with this, though.
Yeah, I'm sure, but again, I feel like effective education must involve at its core spirituality.
I agree. Yeah, I'm thinking about like spiritual growth can, I mean, it's really every bit of your being, kind of, you know what I mean? Like, so education is always adding to that. Yeah, I mean, that's an agreement.
Yeah, like without the proper spiritual foundation, I feel like your education can definitely be misused or can be.
And sorry to interrupt, but your education would be like miscontextualized too.
That's the word I was looking
Yeah.
for. Yes, thank you.
Okay, number 10. Good is anything that results in achieving a goal agreed upon by society. Good is anything that results in achieving a goal agreed upon by a society.
I am going to say that is an absolute big D.
Yep, big fat D.
So, yeah, I mean, you can just go to like Nazi Germany for a very stark example
Yeah.
of how societal agreements don't necessarily result in good.
This goes to relativity. I mean, good doesn't exist. What is good? What good means to me is different for every single person. I mean, it's a relative term. So, good doesn't exist. Big fat disagree.
You can also go toward the route of good. Good does exist.
Capital G.
Yeah, capital G, or if you want to define good as whatever is a successful evolution of a person.
But then it's still relative because then success is relative also. I mean,
Yeah.
you get what I'm saying.
Like successful to what? Successful to survival, successful to love. Like you have to kind of define what your success means.
And it's different for everybody. So
And for me, that's a big disagree.
yeah, good is not achieving a goal agreed upon by a society. I disagree. Look at us here, just sitting in our echo chamber.
I know, right? It's beautiful.
Yeah.
I
I
love
mean,
it.
we're still in agreement on everything.
Yeah, we
I
are.
mean, I feel like we're right.
I know I'm right. Everybody knows that they're right
Yeah.
deep down.
It's funny because some other people maybe listening would answer these questions completely different. It would be nice to have somebody to talk to with a whole different, more like a materialist mindset to see why they would have different answers.
Yeah, maybe next time we
That's
have
what I mean, a
a
little
quiz
echo
like
chamber here.
this, yeah, we can maybe include like a third person that has a different perspective,
Yeah.
possibly.
Yeah, that's a good idea. But for now, you're stuck with us, and let's see, we are on what, number 11?
Number 11.
That's
Yep.
you.
So number 11 is knowledge is found by considering the practical implications of ideas.
I disagree with this. Knowledge is found by considering the practical implications of ideas. I think that a lot of knowledge is, actually, yeah, I don't think knowledge has to be practical. I think that most knowledge is practical. Knowledge is found by considering the practical implication of ideas. Yeah, I'm going to disagree because it's saying knowledge is found by. I mean, I've gained knowledge without considering practical anything. You know what I mean? A lot of knowledge that like you gain on a psychedelic trip, I would say, is kind of just given to you, and then you find the practical implication after. You know what I mean?
Doesn't the practicality of the information sort of come with it? Because the information that you get, regardless, like, have you ever gotten information that you would consider not practical?
But it's saying it's found by considering the practical implications. And I don't think it has to be found that way. You know what I mean? Or maybe am I thinking about this
Oh,
different?
no.
See,
I think you
knowledge
are right.
is found by considering the practical implications of ideas. Hey, if you disagree with, I mean, we don't have to agree on this, you know.
No, so what you're saying is that knowledge can be found in other ways that is not just considering its practicality.
And the practicality comes after.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if I'm reading into that right, but here knowledge is found by considering the practical implications of ideas. No, I mean I disagree with that.
I think I do too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically because like I said, you could find knowledge and not know the practicality until later. So it was found without the consideration of practical implications.
Yeah, it can be found with different methods. Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't think that's probably another pragmatism thing, maybe.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, it's like the word is right there in it. Like practical and pragmatism, I
Yeah.
think, are very, like, they mean the same thing.
Okay, so 11 is a disagree. All right, number 12. The human mind is simply the brain at work.
This is, for me, a definite disagree because, I mean, this goes along the lines of like if you're going to consider panpsychism, like that consciousness is primary, and that like our brains are sort of tuning into it, and what the mind means, at least to me, is sort of the entire scope of consciousness and the way that it expresses itself within the human being. And yes, the brain is heavily involved in that, but it's not the only factor.
The human mind is simply the brain at work. You're saying you disagree?
I disagree. And
Okay.
simply is a troubling word
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
Like,
Well, I disagree as well, but the one part that it's just the word human. The human mind is simply the brain at work. I mean, you could consider that, but
that's why I said I feel like the word mind or like the human mind is like the way that the human being manifests consciousness. So I think that if you're manifesting consciousness,
I th-
it's not just the brain, in my opinion,
and yeah, in my opinion, I think that the brain doesn't even manifest consciousness. I think consciousness manifests the brain.
or the brain tunes into it. So the brain is maybe a mediator or is involved, but it's not like the sole contributor.
Right. Well, what I'm saying that consciousness creates the brain. That's my view on this. Yeah, like the consciousness is fundamental, and it's the brain isn't something that tunes into consciousness. That consciousness is actually creating the brain.
What do you mean by that?
Well, basically, like we've talked about this before, that consciousness is primary over matter in the universe is my belief. So instead of most physical materialists will say that the brain is what is causing your experience, chemical reactions in your brain, neurons firing, all this. I think that consciousness is creating the brain, and the only time any neurons or anything or any chemicals are interacting with your brain is when an observer is looking at those things. So if there's no machine showing that happening, or then it doesn't exist.
Quantum consciousness, right?
Well, yeah, and yeah, basically, consciousness being fundamental wouldn't allow this. So
Yeah, that's where I'm at too. I'm with you.
simply, yeah, I think this is way off. Number 12, the human mind is simply the brain at work. I think that is way off.
Way.
Number 12, disagree.
Okay, number 13. Learning is a process of choosing our identity. Ooh. What do you think about that one?
A process of choosing our identity. That's interesting. I think it is that in a sense. Learning is a process of choosing our identity. I think it is that in a sense, but I might disagree with that. What do you think about that?
I'm thinking disagree just because the way it's worded is learning is a process of choosing our identity. I think the choosing of your identity would have to come after the learning. It's not the process of learning because you don't know who you are. You can't form an accurate, cohesive identity without learning first. And yes, like while you're learning, like your identity is
It's being
forming.
shaped. Yeah.
It's a consequence of learning, but I don't think that it's solely the process. Because this is worded as learning is a process of choosing our identity. Is a. Oh, not the. Yeah,
Learning
a.
is a process of choosing our identity. I mean, that's
I'm
part of
still
it.
I'm still gonna say disagree because I I do think that the identity portion definitely changes as more knowledge comes into. I think,
Well,
yeah,
then I mean, I'm thinking I'm going to agree, kind of based on what you even just said. I feel like maybe it sounds like you agree a little bit, but learning is a process of choosing our identity because as you're learning, your identity is being shaped. I mean, every time you learn, it adds to yourself. I mean, you're gaining a, a piece of knowledge or whatever. I mean, so I think that learning is a process of choosing your identity because it's literally shaping who you are.
I think a better way to say it is learning is a process that shapes your identity because the choosing part is sort of because you can choose your identity. Like if you learn about something, like you can choose an identity, but it doesn't make that identity like set in stone, solid, accurate, or really like correct.
Yeah, this is a weird one because so far this is the first one that's actually making my head hurt a little bit. Like I'm not sure what to think about it. Learning is a process of choosing our identity. This one's freaking bugging me a little bit. Um, I don't know. Are you disagreeing or agreeing?
I'm gonna disagree.
Okay. Uh, I'll agree. We're gonna separate on this
I
one.
love it. The first one.
Yeah.
Good, good.
All right. I agree that it's part of this. I mean, learning is a process of choosing our identity.
It's definitely
Based
a thin line between my agree and disagree, but yeah, I'm gonna go with
and
disagree.
I'm the same. I could kind of see it either way. Um, I one reason I am agreeing is because it doesn't say learning is primarily a process of that. So I'm gonna agree. The mind is a spiritual entity which determines what reality is, and then in parentheses, rather than reality determining what the mind is. What do you think about that?
The mind is a spiritual entity which determines what reality is. Agree.
Yeah, I have a huge agree on that. That's basically kind of what I was talking about a little earlier. That you're not a human being with a brain. You are actually a supreme intellect, a mind that creates all, which is consciousness. That's what you are.
Yeah, I mean, this is essentially what we said earlier. Like, you are a spiritual being having a human experience.
Right.
I think this is just a different way to say it.
Yep. So we're both in agreement on that.
Yeah, big A on that one.
All right. What we got now? You're on number 15.
Number 15 is all true knowledge engages the feelings of the knower. Oh, I love this.
Jeez, this is another one. Oh, okay. All true knowledge engages the feelings of the knower. True knowledge. See, that's where, if it just said all knowledge engages the feeling of the knower, I'd say disagree. But true knowledge, that's a heavy statement. I don't know if I'm going to take that a little heavier than most people would think. I mean, what is truth? That's the fucking question.
Right.
I'm going to, and then you can also ask, well, what does it mean by feelings? I mean, we were talking about this earlier.
This is the exact
Yeah.
conversation we were having earlier.
So if we both agree on this, then we are arguing over nothing. That's clear. Okay, and all true knowledge engages the feelings of the knower. I think that has to be true. Because when you experience something that is true knowledge, it's you have to have a reaction. I mean, what you just have no feelings, like you just experience nothing. I don't know. I think that has to be an agreement for me.
Yeah, I think so too, because it's like we were saying before. The only thing you can trust is, we'll say, things that you can feel, because feelings are beyond ego when you define feeling not as thought, because you're not attaching yourself to thoughts, you're feeling what comes up. And the only true thing that we can understand is what we feel.
And that, yeah, it can't be quantified. I mean, it's a quality, not a it can't be quantified. So I'm going to say that I agree and then clarify that, because this is where we kind of were arguing, because we were misunderstanding each other earlier today. When we're talking about feelings, that's not emotions. That's kind of,
Emotions are like thoughts.
yeah, we're
Yeah.
going to put thoughts and emotions together. Feeling is like one layer deeper, I guess you'd say. It's the actual experience.
I think the best way to define feeling is when you think of love. Like,
Or sadness.
yeah, or sadness.
I
Like,
mean,
you can't like you said, you can't quantify their feelings.
that's what I'm saying. Like, you can see what sadness looks like. You could see a person's face crying with tears, and you could say that's sadness. And that can be quantified by an appearance. But that isn't what sadness actually is. The quality of it is that's the feeling. The most important thing in reality is the ability to choose or decide. Okay. So this is like trying to bring up free will? Is that kind of what this is getting at,
That is an interesting way
or is it
to explain it or to understand the question. Yeah,
right?
for
And it's
sure.
placing importance as the issue here, not just the fact of if it's real or not. I mean, some people don't believe in free will. I mean, hmm. The most important thing in reality is the ability to choose or decide. I mean, the most important thing? I think it's one of the most important things.
Let me go out and say that the ability to choose or decide is sort of like ego driven and survival driven when it comes to like the physical reality, and there are many things about reality that go beyond, your ability to choose or decide. Like when you're meditating or when you're doing spiritual practice, or if you're taking a psychedelic, it's almost like the opposite of choosing or deciding. It's almost like
Flowing.
you're required to flow and surrender, which
Yeah.
seems to be the opposite. So I am going to say that the most important thing in reality is the ability to choose or decide is going to be a disagree.
See, that's interesting because see, you took the question differently. Like when you said ego, I was looking at this is the fact that free will exists, if it exists, is that the most important thing in reality. But then you kind of looked at it as an ego dominated pursuit. So that's interesting. I wasn't thinking of it that way. When I read that, the most important thing in reality is the ability to choose or decide. It's the importance of choosing love over something else. I mean, that's important. Um,
Oh, that's a good
you know
point
what I'm
because
saying?
your pursuit of knowledge could set you down a path but then again, it's like what's good and what's not. Like this is
Yeah,
a
that's
tough
why I
one.
said love, capital L. And then yeah, that's I mean, we're looking at this question kind of differently, so it's interesting.
Which is good.
Yeah,
I
that
think
is
I'm going to still stick with my disagree.
the most important thing in reality is the ability to choose or decide. I'm going to I'm going to agree. I know because the ego thing makes me not want to agree, but I'm trying to like close my eyes and actually think for myself. Like, is that the most important thing? I mean, isn't that what we're all doing? Isn't it a game? Is it a dream? What is it like? I think it's important. I think we are the universe, and our purpose is to explore the universe. It's self exploration, and I think that's what we're doing. I'm gonna go with it is the most important thing because that's all we have to do.
Fair enough. I like it.
16 agreement.
Number 17. Intelligence is the ability to know. Oh, man, I almost wish that it had a capital G in the beginning of know. But what do you think?
Intelligence is the ability to know. So intelligence is also kind of like subjective, right? I mean, I'm gonna go with a disagreement. I do not agree. Intelligence is the ability to know. I think that can be it. I mean, some people could say that. I could see why someone would agree with that. But I mean, the reason I'm thinking about disagreeing with this is because when I hear intelligence, I go to like an IQ test in my head. I think about that type of knowledge rather than wisdom. Whereas wisdom and intelligence aren't the same thing. And I value wisdom over knowledge or over intelligence. So I think intelligence isn't won't give you the ability to know everything. I don't know. I think I have a separation between intelligence and wisdom there. So I'm gonna go with the disagree. Intelligence is the ability to know. I don't think that's all of it. I think intelligence is more of a specific mode of thinking that human beings, like a specific mode of thinking human beings have, mainly like problem solving rather than knowing. I associate knowing more with wisdom and experience, I guess. So I'm gonna go with I disagree.
So I'm going to differ from you and I'm going to go with agree because I think that knowing is a word that can encompass all types of things similar to like the word understanding. And the reason I said I wish it had like a G on the beginning of it was like the word gnosis, the um like the objective or the journey of knowing, like with a capital G. So I'm thinking that I'm going to agree with this.
All right, that's another one.
Yes.
I understand. I could see why. Uh, I almost agree with it too, but I think I don't know. I think intelligence is maybe a little different. I just associate with problem solving more, practicality. I don't know. I mean, wisdom is right there too. I don't know. It's just that's where what my gut is telling me. Okay, number 18. A person is nobody until he or she takes action. It is in acting that a person determines who he or she is. So, this is
Interesting. So my initial reaction to this is disagree. Um, and you don't have to look very far. Just meditating or most spiritual practices are like literally the opposite of this, you
hmm.
know?
Well, I disagree with what you I would say taking action, meditating would be taking action.
That's a good, yeah, that is a good point.
I think this is kind of another way of saying actions speak louder than words. That's kind of what I got from it. A person is nobody until he or she takes action. It is in the choosing or acting that a person determines who he or she is.
Yeah, I think that's the part. Your action is what determines who you are. I don't think. Hmm, no, I think there's more to who a person is than what they do, because also you can look at it as like things happen to you as well, and they form who you are and who you define yourself as, and who others define you as. So it's not just what you're doing, it's also what is happening to you as well. I think there's a lot of different facets to this.
But then it's wouldn't the ability of how you react kind of define who you are?
Partially, yeah. But I think it works both ways too. There are some things that can happen to you that without any action of your own can influence your identity.
Okay. Hmm. A person is nobody until he or she takes action. It is in acting that a person determines who he or she is.
That's weird too. A person is nobody. Yeah, I also just don't like the way that the
I
question
don't
is
either.
worded either.
But like I said, I think it's just kind of saying that talk is cheap and you're defined by your actual movement in reality, not by maybe your thought.
I can definitely see that why you'd say it.
So what, you disagree?
Yeah, I'm gonna go disagree on that one.
I'm gonna go agree. Basically because I don't know, I think what you do, your actions, it it shows a deeper part of the truth of who you are rather than, you know, I don't know, maybe like talking about hypotheticals and all that. Like you could get to know some things about the way a person thinks, but watching them react under pressure is the most telling, I'd say.
That's a good point.
So I'm gonna go with agree, even though I do kind of slightly disagree. I think I'm just gonna go agree there.
Okay. Okay. Number 19. Intelligence is the ability to formulate and test out new solutions. What do you think?
Intelligence is the ability to formulate and test out new solutions. I mean, is that saying that's all that intelligence is, or is that, you know what I mean? Because what the other question was, there was another intelligence question that I disagreed with. Oh, the ability to know. That was the other one. And I disagree. Okay. Intelligence is the ability to formulate and test out new solutions. I think I want to say that's true. But like that's not all that it is to me. But I view intelligence in that sort of way. You know, I mean, when just a minute ago I was talking about intelligence versus wisdom, formulating and testing out solutions in my mind feels more like an intelligence than wisdom. So that's kind of where I'm basing my thought about this word intelligence right now. So Intelligence is the ability to formulate and test out new solutions. I think that is intelligent to do, you know?
To me, I'm looking at it as it reads to me like intelligence is the ability to perform science.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I feel like that's the direction the question is going in, and I'm gonna disagree because yes, that is like a facet of intelligence, or like it can be considered intelligence, but it's just saying intelligence is this. So that's where I'm gonna say I'm gonna disagree.
See, I do think that is intelligence, though. I'm going to agree, but I don't think that's all intelligence is. Clearly, that's not what I mean. I'm going to just assume that it doesn't mean that that's only like that's all intelligence is.
I'm kind of taking it as that's the primary definition of intelligence according to the question.
You know
That's
what?
why I'm gonna disagree.
Well, because I don't think that is the primary definition either.
I mean, it doesn't say that,
I know what you mean, though.
but
It does
it
kind of
does
feel like that.
because it says like the word is right there instead of like is also or part of
All right,
intelligence.
yeah,
It's you know what I mean.
I don't think I can agree with that now because I think science is like an intelligent endeavor for sure, and I think you need intelligence to do science and all that. But I don't think that's all there is to intelligence. I don't know. I'm gonna disagree. I guess I'm gonna stick with you on that one. All right, number 20. Reality results from God holding the universe in existence by the power of God's thought.
What a strange question.
Yeah, it's a big one.
Reality results from God holding the universe in existence by the because so okay, what this does is it separates God from the universe. Then by the power of God's thought. So it also signifies God as an individual thinker. So I'm going to break this down into like a disagree because I feel like it's defining God as something separate from the universe. And like my vision of God is sort of like it is the universe, it's like an all encompassing everything. And this seems to be like more along the lines of the definition of God being like a sky daddy type of thing. So, or like a religious outlook of God. So I'm going to say disagree.
All right. Well, I'm going to agree with this while also agreeing kind of with what you said. I don't, I think you, I'm not going into the question as deep. I find it hard for somebody to accurately pin God in such a short sentence anyway. But I do believe the universe is basically God's thought, which is it's pretty close to what I've experienced in my beliefs. So reality results from God holding the universe in existence by the power of God's thought. I also agree that God isn't separate from the universe. It is the universe. It's you and I. It's everything. Um, but this statement is still true, even though if it's not completely right or doesn't match up exactly with my idea of God. I mean, it does result from the power of thought. Like you can replace the word God in this sentence with consciousness. Reality results from consciousness holding the universe in existence by the power of conscious thought, which is like I'm going to agree with that.
I just feel like it's exemplifying the separateness of God from the universe. And yeah, you could ultimately replace the word God with consciousness, but in terms of the question, the way that it poses God is it's not posing it as consciousness. I don't think you have to define what God is, like what you're referring to exactly, because God has so many definitions depending on lineage and belief system.
I think that this is basically I agree with this. I think it's just using God as kind of a creator or like a higher power of what's like higher consciousness. I mean, you can define God how you want, but I think this is as close as a sentence would get. Like obviously it's not I'm not saying this is 100% true, but I somewhat I agree with this a bit. So I'm going to agree with it.
All right. All right. So now we are on to question number 21, which is our halfway point. There's 40 questions total here. So number 21 is the test of any theory or belief must be its effect on us. That is, its practical consequences.
All right, this is a tough one for me because I do agree with this in a sense. The test of any theory or belief must be its effect on us, that is, its practical consequences. Because, see, this is where I have a problem with this stuff. Like, I mean, I'm not trying to talk shit or anything, but personally, like with quantum mechanics and quantum physics and this stuff, like, it seems. I mean, there's a lot of things that go on that like don't really actually exist because there's no actual substance behind it. The test of any theory or belief must be its effect on us. That is practical concept.
Well, it's funny you bring up quantum mechanics because I think quantum mechanics fits perfectly under what this is because you can only measure quantum mechanics based on its effect on us because we don't
Right.
know what quantum mechanics is,
That's what I
but
mean.
we can use it as a tool that where we can see its effects.
That's what I mean. It's not even like a real thing. It's more of just a model of a predictive model. You know, I mean, it's like applying a model. I don't know. The test of any theory or belief must be its effect on us. That is, its practical consequences. That's another. Now I'm having a problem with the word must here. Must be its effect on us. You know what I mean? You got a problem with that too? I don't know.
Honestly, I don't. For me, I'm agreeing with this because when I look at any spiritual or intellectual practice, its legitimacy is always based upon like what you can see as its effects on the person who's practicing it. If not, it's not a it's like almost by definition not a legitimate practice.
Yeah, I mean, I that's what I mean. My initial thought was definitely agree, and I do agree, but it was just the word must that kind of puts me off because it makes it feel too dogmatic. But I mean, I do agree with it, so I guess I will. I'm going to agree with this one. Number 22. Knowledge is objective rather than subjective. That is, it is in accord with the teachings of physical science concerning the nature of material reality. I'll read that one more time. Knowledge is objective rather than subjective. That is, it is in accord with the teachings of physical science concerning the nature of material reality.
Big D, baby.
You disagree also? I had a feeling maybe you would have some agreement with it. I
No, I mean the knowledge is not just based on or concerning the nature of material reality. Like that's part of it, but knowledge goes way beyond that. So yeah, that to me it's easy disagree.
knowledge subjective. I'm with you on that. I definitely disagree.
Okay, well I mean that's an easy one.
Do you have a can you think of like an example of a subjective knowledge?
Yeah, I mean I think spiritual knowledge is sort of subjective
Yeah.
because it depends upon your culture, your lineage, your practice, and different paths. I mean, you could say all paths lead to the same thing, and so in that way, no, I still don't think.
But even you would have to assume that everybody is. It would take an assumption that everyone is even looking at the same objective reality. I mean,
Yeah, I think that's an easy disagree,
yeah,
honestly.
yeah, it's trying to pull something from it, but yeah, it's pretty. I'm pretty firm on that as well. 22, disagree.
Number 23. A person is really the sum of that person's choices up to the current point in that person's life. What do you think?
Okay, see, now you read that, and it made me think of one of that previous question. I don't know if you remember what I was talking. The one that said, where I pretty much summed up as talk is cheap, actions speak louder than words. So reading that question made me rethink what I said for that previous question also, because this I disagree with totally.
Interesting.
Because, dude, I mean, I think of myself. about a year ago was I was like a raging alcoholic and drug addict and all this. And I would say in a moment's time, you can change. I don't think you are your past, uh, especially when you're talking about entheogens, psychedelics, and having like divine experiences. You could literally change. So I don't, but you know what? But I still am all that stuff. You know, yeah, this is a tough one.
Because
Because
the sum.
because yeah, that all that stuff added to what I became or what I am now.
And everything you ever were, everything that you ever experienced.
See, I read that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I read that initially as like you are your past,
Mm-hmm.
but in a sense, I am the sum of all of my choices. A person is really the sum of that person's choices up to the current point in that person's life. You're talking about the ego here. So we're talking about a person. We're not talking about anything deep metaphysical here. This is your ego is the sum of the choices you've made. I'm trying to think of like what else are you? Like, well, how would you disagree with that? Part of me feels like I want to, but now I'm like when I'm trying to go through it rationally, I don't know. I think I might agree with it. What was your thought?
My thought is I agree with it. Just because, yeah, like it seems when you look at the word person, you can put human in there. You can put, to me, that's like it's like you said, it's not deeper. It's like,
Like you could put ego. Like I can. You know
yeah,
what
I
I
think
mean? Like
ego is a good thing to put there. So the ego or the person is really the sum of that person's choices up to the current point in that person's life. Yeah, I agree because you are an amalgamation of everything that you've been through, everything you've done, the choices that you made. They don't define like one choice or two choices or 10,000 choices
the sum.
in your past don't define you, but
You are the sum of that.
you're still all, like what I mean by that is your choices that you've done or that you've made in the past do not define you, but all of the choices that you've made up until this current point sum up who you
They
are.
built you.
They
Yeah.
built you.
Like
Yes.
they stacked.
So it's not that one or two or prior thoughts define you. It's that, or prior actions and choices define you. It's that everything that you've chosen up until this point sort of does. And it defines your ego. That specifically, I think, is the important part. So I'm gonna say agree
I
on that
agree.
one.
You could even say this in like a technical sense. Like technically, that is what you are. Like I heard somebody say this. I don't know if it was on a podcast, but they were talking about how random events don't exist. Like there's no such thing as random. It's just ignorance. Like if you had all the information, you could predict every single thing.
Mm.
Like a coin flip, for instance. Like you flip a coin, you think that's random where it's gonna land, but it's only because you don't know the force you're using, the angle it's at, like the what do they call it, the the weight of the air or whatever. Um, but like if you knew all that, it wouldn't be random; it'd just be predictable. So I've heard people say that. I've heard people say that nothing random actually exists. And it kind of makes me think of this. Like your life does actually add up to every event that you've done, like every decision you've made.
Yeah, and it seems that we're both in agreement there.
All right. 23, agree. 24, God is the spiritual summit of reality.
Gigantic, 100% A.
Yeah, I agree. Yep.
By definition, God is the spiritual summit of reality. Like
Yeah.
it's everything.
That's actually a good that's a good definition of God. Actually, I sometimes just find hard to put words to it, and that's pretty it's pretty spot on.
Yeah, if we could just have 24 define all of us, like
Yeah.
just that be the only question in the test, I think yeah, that's like the biggest agree I can think of.
And if it had infinity in there too, that would be eternity infinity. But yeah, 24, I definitely agree with that. If you experienced it, you know.
Number 25. Reality basically consists of dealing with questions of love, choice, freedom, personal relationships, and death. What do you think?
See, all right, I hate this question. Like the way it's worded. What do you mean? Like reality basically. Like what's up with the basically? Reality basically consists of dealing with questions of love, choice, freedom, personal relationships, and death. I mean, kinda. When you use the word basically, that's part of it. I mean, that's not all of it though.
No, that's a to me it's a
It's a
massive
stupid
disagree.
question
Yeah,
though.
because like you can't use the word reality
Oh yeah,
there.
and I
You
didn't
can't.
even. I was so angry at the question. I didn't even process reality was the first word. Yeah, this is stupid.
I think if you would replace the word reality with ego, then you have a correct statement. But
That's true.
reality is more that like reality encompasses all things, and
This is insane.
this is basically just a human experience. But really, what it comes down to is like, what do you define reality as strictly the human experience of five senses, or do you
Talking about like,
define reality as like more than that?
I think you have to, or
Yeah,
well,
well,
maybe
depend.
you don't.
If you're a
'Cause-
realist or a pragmatist, then you won't necessarily define it as that. But if you're along the lines of where we're at, then I would think your definition of reality is a bit bigger.
That's a good point. I didn't even think of it like that because sometimes I make that issue of not putting myself in someone else's shoes for a moment.
Hmm.
But that's true. Reading this as reality as I thought it was maybe a couple years ago, reality basically consists of dealing with questions of love, choice, freedom, personal relationships, and death. I would say basically it does. But reading reality as I do now, that's insane
Hmm.
because reality is much more than that. And when you're talking about beyond, your five senses or your quote unquote standard state of consciousness. So we're looking at it through that lens. It's a big disagree.
Yeah, this question really depends on how you define reality. So yeah,
Okay. 26. Education is a process of stimulating students to search themselves for their identity. Let me read that one more time. Education is a process of stimulating students to search themselves for their identity.
I love this. Absolutely agree. This is perfect. This is what education should be and what education is not in quote unquote modern civilized cultures.
Yeah, I mean, this is a lot better than the last question. Um,
I think the last question was awesome. I actually really loved it
I
because
hated
just
it.
the
The way it was,
wording was
well, once
perfect.
we
Yeah.
actually broke it down, it was pretty good.
Yeah.
But when I was thinking so biasly from like my initial thought was just to go to what I believe and what I've experienced, and I thought it just sounded stupid to me. But I could see how you could say you agree with that for sure. Education is a process of stimulating students to search themselves for their identity. I agree with that. The whole identity part, they keep throwing that in. I mean, I believe I agree with this mostly because I think education needs to be them. They have to do it themselves. It can't be like a lot what you see now. I think this is what you're getting at. It's like a lot of memorization for something and then dispose of it, or like you just kind of fed the information instead of finding it. Like that's the beautiful thing about a lot of these like spiritual teachers, the good ones. They don't have to really tell you anything. They'll guide you, push you in the direction. Spiritual guide, I guess that's why they call it that.
Yeah, they guide you to seeing it for yourself.
Because and I've discovered this to be the case with everything. You have to discover it for yourself to actually understand it, like believe it to your core. And that goes for a lot of things. Like if somebody tells you something, you don't have the same relationship with that belief or knowledge if you discovered it on your own.
Yeah, dude, no part of our education, whether it be through our churches, through our institutional, like universities, high schools, no part of those educations are about finding your identity for yourself. None of it.
It's crazy, right?
There's never been a single aspect of schooling where I was in a self-reflective state or was forced to self-reflect in any way, shape, or form. The only self-reflection that they do is punishing you, and
That's a good
then
point.
when you self-reflect in a way where you're analyzing why you were punished and you're blaming yourself for it, it's the opposite. You're not finding yourself. They're creating an identity for you,
Yeah.
especially when you look at like social studies and history classes, how they say, oh, the winner writes the textbooks and stuff like
Yeah,
that. And that's very
it
true.
is true.
You're being indoctrinated when you're in school and when you're in church. You're not being incentivized to find yourself or your true identity. So yeah, I think that's a really easy one.
And that's why you see like people leave high school and have no idea what they want to be, like what they want to do in life.
Yep.
And those are usually the people that are, don't have like a role model outside. They're brought up by a school. Like those kids that graduate knowing exactly what they want and all that, they usually have like something good going for them at home, or like, maybe some structure in their life, this or that. But school alone does not teach you. But is this talking about school or just? Oh, okay. Either way, education is a process of stimulating students to search for themselves or their identity. Yes, I agree.
Number 27. True ideas are those which we can validate or verify through the use of our senses, that is, through scientific observation. Well, hold on. Before you poop on it, let me just say, okay, true ideas. Yeah, poop all you want.
Yeah, I disagree. I mean, the use of our senses. I mean, I could see why someone would agree with this. That's where scientific observation. I mean, true ideas you can get from, like we were saying, even like love. Like you can gain insight from things like that. I don't know.
Yeah, I think this is an easy one.
Yeah.
Yeah, disagree.
Yeah, you don't have to verify shit through science. I mean, you do sometimes, but not for this.
But
Not about a true idea.
if you're gonna like, you could say like a true objective fact, but true ideas, like,
Still, I would have had a problem with that, I think, even.
yeah, I'm
Unless,
not
because
gonna.
I'd go into what is objective then. I mean, we kind of talked about that. All right. So what? That was 27?
Yeah.
That's a disagree.
Mm-hmm.
All right, number 28. Knowledge ultimately comes from a supernatural that is a divine source.
Oh
That's
man,
interesting.
this is such a hard question to answer. And what was it? Knowledge ultimately comes from a supernatural that is divine source. I don't like the word supernatural, but I understand that its meaning coming from the word divine. In my opinion, that makes this an agree for me because it's not like it uses the word knowledge, which to me, knowledge definitely has to come from a strong foundation of spiritual knowledge, or it's not going to be like true knowledge. That's just my opinion, the way that I read this question. So yeah, I'm gonna go with an agree.
Yeah, well, I agree too. And not even like as specific as you said it, because it is this divinity, this, God, whatever you want to call it, is actually the source of everything. So it has to be the knowledge too.
Oh yeah, that's an easy way to interpret it. Yeah,
Yeah.
very good point.
All
All
right.
right, cool. Yeah, that's an easy one.
Okay.
So number 29, since a person acts freely, he or she is responsible for his or her actions. Oh man, that's an interesting one.
I mean, I'm going to have to say yes. Unless like you're trying to is this another free will question, or is it assuming that you have free will, right?
I think this question assumes that you have free will because inherent, like in the question itself, it says since a person acts freely. So I think that is saying free will
Yeah.
being a thing.
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah. So yeah, for me that's an easy one too. I agree.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's literally the only thing you're responsible for. Okay. Yourself. Number 30. A person must reach beyond this material world to fulfill his or her spiritual destiny.
Boom. A.
Yeah. I mean,
Agree.
I think yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, you have to agree.
Yeah, you have to because it's a massive part of what you can define as your destiny.
And yeah, I mean, well, anything, I mean, spiritual has to be not.
Actually,
What? Hold on. Go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt,
No,
but
you're good. Go
I'm
ahead.
thinking I'm thinking disagree now.
Read it one more time.
A person must reach beyond this material world to fulfill his or her spiritual destiny. And
Ah, must.
I'm thinking no, because I like, honestly, when it comes down to it, we need all types of people, all types of animals, all types of everything to fully encompass what like the spiritual reality is. Like you need it all, and you have to love and appreciate every single being for their karmic path. So yeah, I mean, initially I went with like my quick emotional
Same.
thought,
Same.
but then yeah,
I mean,
I'm
you egged me
changing.
on too with that boom. I was like, yeah.
It was a yeah, it was a
Well, it's the word must. There's no must. There's no must for anything.
yeah.
Um, I think, I mean, some people's spiritual destiny would be to not even have one. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
because
like,
the road is not for
it's
everybody.
not that this is something you must even do or think about. And a lot of people don't. A lot of people are just like materialist, atheists. I mean, hopefully, people that are listening even. But yeah, yeah, there's no such thing as like a spiritual destiny, I guess.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like I can define what I think my spiritual destiny is, but my spiritual destiny is not yours and is not anybody else's and is not especially when you're looking at like people from around the world. Everybody has a different definition of what spiritual destiny is. So you could answer this question within the realm of your spiritual destiny and how you feel that is, but the way it's worded, I'm going to go with a disagree because I don't think that everybody's spiritual destiny is the same.
Yeah, I disagree. I don't agree with like the concept of a spiritual destiny. Really, I mean,
Yeah.
everything is perfect how it's supposed to be. People people have different destinies.
Yeah. All right, number 31. The physical world, as experienced by our senses, is basically factual, objective reality.
I think you know what I'm gonna say.
Honestly, I don't know what you're going to
Okay,
say.
maybe I need to read the question again because I. All right, what was it? 31.
31. I'll read it for you again.
Okay.
The physical world, as experienced by our senses, is basically factual, objective reality.
See, there's that basically again, and also I see what you mean now because now it depends what or what you define factual objective reality as.
But I think first you have to look at it says the physical world as experienced by our senses.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard to define that in a spiritual sense. This is mostly like a materialistic
Well,
question.
it also assumes that there's such thing as an objective reality, a physical objective reality.
I'm going to say that there is. So for me, I think this is an easy agree because it lays it out for you. Like the physical world as experienced by our senses, one part, is basically factual objective reality. I think those two things are saying the same thing.
I disagree with this one
Okay?
because don't I don't agree with the premise even. I think there's way too much relativity. I think because we have language, I think we think that we're all experiencing the same thing, but I feel like it's a very different. I think each person has a pretty different experience, perhaps. Okay, number 32. Knowledge is that which is useful in achieving a solution to some problem. Okay, so yeah, there's a couple of these with intelligence and knowledge. All right, go ahead. What do you think?
All right. I am going to say disagree just because that is useful in achieving a solution to some problem. I think that what we label as problems are just like egoic ways of exemplifying our separateness.
Yeah.
So I don't think that true knowledge um, is informed by that. So
Mm-hmm.
that's why I'm going to
Okay.
say disagree.
Yeah, this is a good one. Because would you say though that all knowledge is useful in achieving a solution to a problem? I mean, all knowledge that you've ever gained could be used to solve a problem, correct?
It could be. So that would kind of fit with saying knowledge is that which is useful. But I think what this is trying to do is define knowledge as something that can be directly applied to a problem, and that if it's not being directly applied to a solution to a problem, then it's not considered knowledge. That's the way I'm looking at it.
I see what you mean. Because I could answer it either way. I mean, depending on kind of the way I look at it.
And I have an issue with people defining knowledge based on like their current idea of what their problems are, because you
Yeah.
can be distracted and sort of your mind can be convoluted by like what you define as a problem in your current life, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm gonna disagree.
Number 33. Reality has its basis and origin in the material physical world. I feel like we already had a question that was basically this.
Yeah, there was one that was close, and I disagree. Reality has its basis and origin in the material physical world. I think we perceive a material physical world in just this current state of consciousness. Expand your consciousness or experience a different state of consciousness, that it's not true. And it's just as real. It's still reality.
Yeah, I think that the truth is like the literal opposite of this statement.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a big disagree. Okay, number 34. Obtaining knowledge is basically a process of searching the physical universe for objective facts. Yuck.
Yeah, I mean that's just as easy of a disagree as the last question. 35. People receive knowledge by revelation from God. Wow.
I'm going to say that's definitely I definitely agree with that. I mean, it doesn't say it's the only way. I mean, but yeah, if you have a revelation from God, it's usually you could you could bet that you're gaining some knowledge from it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's an easy agree for me too.
Easy here at the end, right?
Yeah, the middle was a little bit rough there, but we're
Yeah.
getting it's giving us a break at
And
the end.
I knew this is what it would be, though. A lot of it is us picking apart the wording.
And that's exactly why I
I
think it's fun to do this,
Yeah.
because that's like within the wording, that's where the nuance of your answers are going to lie.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder what would happen if we took this in like 2 minutes or something and see how different all of our answers would be. It'd
Yeah.
be crazy. But when you actually think about it, yeah, you really get to the meat of it. Okay, what number 35?
We're on 36.
Oh, 36. People can reconstruct, remake solutions to problems, and this results in new knowledge. I'm going to read that again. People can reconstruct solutions to problems, and this results in new knowledge.
Absolutely agree. It's a beautiful part of the human intellect, is being able to reconstruct solutions to problems, being able to reconstruct anything you see around us, and you can definitely acquire new knowledge from doing that.
Yeah, I don't see how you could disagree with this.
Yeah, I mean, because it says people can. If you're gonna say
Yeah.
people can't, that
Right,
seems
that's
like
insane.
insane. Yeah. Number 37. Reality occurs when a person chooses to face a situation and make a commitment.
Dude, that's a weird question. Reality occurs when a person chooses to face a situation and make a commitment. I mean, reality is all that's occurring. You know what I'm saying?
That's why, for me, I just don't agree with this statement by any means, because I can't make sense of it within my own like philosophy.
Well,
So,
I'm gonna try to think about it a different way. What do you think it means?
well, let's see. Reality, to me, I think it means that when a person is faced with a situation and they make a choice and a commitment, then like that's the most important factor in what their reality is, or something like that. And I mean, I understand it to a point, but I don't think the wording reality occurs when a person chooses. No, I think reality occurs in lots of different ways. And I think it occurs maybe even stronger in other types of situations. I
No,
mean, I
I
don't
mean,
know.
dude,
I'm not a fan of the question, to be
I
honest.
mean, it's all that occurs. Like, when is reality not occurring? I don't understand.
So do you think that's an agree because reality is always occurring? And maybe like this is a saturated form of reality that happens when you choose to face a situation and make a commitment?
Well, I mean, reality is always occurring, so it's a redundant question, but I don't that's why I was like saying what does it mean, because it doesn't make sense then. It should just say reality occurs and then it could say anything. So when a person chooses to face a situation and make a commitment, like what are you insinuating happens if it's not reality?
Yeah, that's why I'm just going to disagree with the question or with the statement overall.
How though? But reality occurs when a person like what do you you know what I'm saying?
The reason I'm disagreeing is because reality occurs when this
You're
is
saying
messing me
reality
up.
doesn't occur when they do that?
It's it's not that reality doesn't occur because reality is always here,
Is it
but
insinuating that like reality wasn't occurring?
yeah, yes, it's insinuating that reality wasn't occurring before the commitment was taken on. That's why I'm disagreeing.
If that's what it insinuates, then I disagree too. But it's not. It's
I mean, that's the way that I'm interpreting it. I don't know how, like, you're going to ultimately interpret it, but that's the way I'm going to answer it.
man, this is bothering me. I don't mean to nitpick. Sorry, but reality occurs when a person chooses to face a situation and make a commitment. I mean, I'm going to agree because I can't. I have to, I guess. But I think I might be misinterpreting it a little bit.
All right, well, let's move on to 38. The mind is biological in origin and can be explained in physical material terms.
I'm gonna disagree. Um, the mind is biological in origin and can be explained in physical material terms. No, well, actually, you know what? I mean, it can be, not accurately though.
Now, the brain can be, but the mind is different.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. I mean, the mind is biological in origin and can be explained. When it says the mind, it would be also interesting if they had capitalized M, but I think that's what they mean, right?
I think what they mean is essentially, is the mind strictly the brain or is the mind more?
I would say it's more though, right?
That's why,
Yeah.
in my opinion, this is a disagree.
Yeah, I'm with you. Disagree. All right, number 39. The laws by which human conduct is judged are determined by God. Yeah, this is a weird
This
one.
I'm going to disagree with because I don't think that there are a determined set of laws, period, no
Y-
matter what God you're defining it as.
And it's like it's insinuating a judgmental God, like the laws by which human conduct is judged or yeah, the laws by which human conduct is judged are determined by God. Oh,
I mean, this could also be interpreted as like, when you die, do you feel like you're going to have some sort of a life review where you go next is determined by how much good you've done compared to bad? Like, that's another way of interpreting the question. But I'm going to say that, yeah, there's no real construct of human laws that are determined, period. It's all cultural.
so it's talking about like governmental laws or
That's, well, the way I'm looking at it. I'm not looking at it as in terms of governmental laws. I'm looking at it in terms of how different cultures determine morality, because laws are basically determinations of morality and how you should act. And since that differs so much from culture to culture, I don't think that you can say that one set is determined by God over another. So for me, it's going to be a disagree.
I don't like the question, so I'm going to disagree too. But I kind of can find a way to agree with it actually. But yeah, it's weird. It's a weird one. I'm going to still disagree actually.
Okay, well, last but not least, the final question, number 40. Reality ultimately exists in the individual person.
Damn, that's a tough one. I mean, it
I like this
does.
one.
It does exist. I mean,
Ultimately, though, what do you think?
well, I think that you're no. I disagree because you can change your state to not even really be a person. I mean, like it insinuates that you have to be a person and it's not occurring anywhere. If it means your mind, reality ultimately exists in the individual person. That's like a I don't know. Try to pick that apart a little bit for me.
For me, I think it's an easy agree. Um, because to me, what this is saying is like, do you think that reality is different for each person? Do you think reality is basically constructed by and inspired by like each individual, or do you think that it's the same for everyone? Like, is
Oh,
it
duh,
physical,
yeah,
or is it, you know what I mean?
I got
So
you.
for me, I'm saying this is easily agreed because to me, reality does exist within each individual person subjectively and differently.
Yeah, I got stupid brain right now. Like I was like reading that, like yeah, that's clearly what it means. So yeah, that's definitely an agree.
That's it.
The
All
way
right.
you worded it was better.
So we're going to take a quick break here and tally up our scores, and then we're going to be back with maybe percentages, but maybe not. So the way this works is that so after you answer all the questions, you got to figure out your sub scores. So you add up all of your agrees for the 10 items which are keyed as idealism. Then you do the same thing for each of the categories. So we're going to take a quick break here and we're going to do that. Okay, so we're back and we have our results. So this is only counting agrees in each category. So we're going to go through each category, then we're each going to say what we have, and you guys can compare at home.
All right, so the first category is idealism. What did you have?
I have 7 agrees for idealism,
All right, well, I have 8.
and that is my highest category.
Really? That's my second highest. Yeah.
Okay, the next category is realism. What do you got for realism?
I only had 1 agree, and I assumed that we would probably be pretty much on the low end of that.
Yeah, I figured as well. I had 3.
3.
Yeah.
All right, pragmatism. I had 4.
I actually had 4 as well. That would be my second lowest category.
Yeah, me too.
And 5 is existentialism, where I had 5.
This was my highest category. I had 9.
I was surprised when we were going through the existentialism ones how many disagrees I had because I thought
Nah.
I'd have a lot more.
Yeah. I
A
I
lot more
thought
agrees, I mean.
I thought idealism would be my highest actually. I mean, it was close. I had 1 more, and I honestly thought I might be a little higher with pragmatism too, because I mean I don't consider myself a pragmatist, but I don't know. I think I can usually agree with that. I would say I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely consider myself pragmatic just in general
In
too,
general, yeah,
because I like to like apply things to like how I'm going to actively use them in my life. But yeah, on this I had kind of a low one for pragmatism.
yeah. What you have 4
I
too,
had
right?
4, yeah.
Yes, yeah. I have 4. I mean that's not that low, I guess.
So according to this, I am mostly an idealist, kind of an existentialist, a pragmatist sometimes, and definitely not a realist.
Yeah, I'm definitely not a realist as well. I only have 1 agree with realists, so I'm going. Um, yeah, then existentialism, that was my highest with a 9, but right below it was idealism with 8. So
Yeah, that's pretty much exactly how I expected both of us to fall with like just a few differences there.
yeah, it's pretty accurate.
Yeah, I would say so.
It's fun too. I like it's fun like going through these questions, like picking them apart.
Yeah, I'd like to do something like this again. Hopefully, everybody listening enjoyed it as well. And if you followed along, maybe you differed, maybe you aligned yourself with us, but who knows? I think it's a very good and well put together test.
Yeah, it's fun to do. It's something to do, and on top of it, it was like a kind of a good brain exercise.
Yeah, and
We got to
credit to Ross-Barger for the creation of this. I don't know if it was for some sort of a thesis or something like that, but yeah, credit to Ross-Barger for creating this.
But yeah, it got us thinking, so that's good.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you all for listening. With that, I will bid you farewell.
Goodbye, folks.